We are open for the Q&A session, a very quick one. And I ask you if you have doubts, questions, comments by the participants, or if we can go directly to lunch. Albano from General Motors. I'd like to take the opportunity and make a provocation in a good sense to our friend Rodrigo, because I know he emphasized the technical part of the Alliance program, but we also have a cultural question, and I'd like him to mention this cultural aspect since the Asian culture and the GM culture is very much based on talking to our employees. So if we have, you have a couple of minutes to talk about this cultural aspect. Thank you, Albano, for your question and the provocation. So, on my presentation, maybe because I'm an engineer, I focus more on the technical aspect, but all of that aspect of implementation of the 21 months, it exists and it was studied. This period was studied and it wants to make the company be able to run the energy programs for more than 1 year. And in the planning that they do in the budget, they can plan energy efficiency as a tool to increase energy efficiency and competitiveness. And our wish when we talk about culture in energy efficiency, after this cycle of 24 months of the Alliance program, the energy efficiency culture plus competitive gains, efficiency, it remains at the company. This is what you're doing at Votoran team. So the idea of 21 months, it's a cycle of planning, of staff, of time, of financial resources, technical resources, applied within an oriented line of energy efficiency with a commitment of the leadership, with the technical team and external agents helping in this process. So the Alliance program, we do not deliver an action of identification of opportunities. It's not a simple diagnosis. It's to promote these energy efficiency actions. Thank you, Albana, for the opportunity to emphasize this point. Thank you, Rodrigo. Do we have other questions? Yes, we have. Gustavo, please. I have a question to you.
So in the Programa Mais Brasil, who is actually doing all the analysis and performing the identification of the problems, and who is paying for that work?
Ok, great question. Bom, respondendo em português.
Answering in Portuguese, whoever executes the program is Senai currently from the industry system, and this model is financed by contributions that come from the private or the public sector. And there is a budgetary composition. In general, part of the part comes from the Ministry of Industry, part of the resources come from SEBRAE, and this is how it's built. I can check if you're interested the details, but I don't have it with me now.
Also living in São Paulo, and I'm from Japanese METI and representing Japanese METI in South America. And I have a question to Mr. Carlos Alexandre of MME.
Hello?
In the first part of your keynote presentation, you mentioned about legal framework to encourage energy efficiency. And But it seems that many of the regulations doesn't include specific targets. And my question is, do you have any time frame to modernize Brazil's energy efficient relevant regulations?
Se eu entendi bem,
If I understood your question, you ask in relation to the targets that we have. Well, this is a very important question because in general terms, we do have targets to achieve in energy efficiency, as I showed in my presentation in relation to the Paris Agreement. We have targets agreed, but we don't have the pathway to achieve these targets. And this is a very important element because right now we are preparing Jefferson that we see in the back. We have the mission of preparing a national plan for energy efficiency, providing how to achieve this 10%. Because this 10%, this target of 10%, were put as a challenge at the time when the plan was done. But maybe from the National Plan of Energy Efficiency, from then, maybe some other requirements will be derived. But I see, for example, not only the example from Japan and other countries where there is a target to reduce consumption in some industries. So maybe large industries, mid-sized industries, but with conditions so that from this greater efficiency we can have benefits, fiscal, tax benefits. But this is something that is on our radar and we've been working on it, and I personally believe that this is the future as we need more and more to increase energy efficiency in our grid, and it's very much renewable, but this makes us face much more challenges because when the grid is very renewable, the energy efficiency efforts are translated into smaller benefits in terms of emissions. But because one thing is to reduce 1 terawatt per hour of a country like China, where most of the grid is still concentrated on oil derivatives and fossil fuels. So the result of 1 terawatt saved means a lot of a significant reduction in GHG. So if we consider under this point of view that has been considered by the G20, by the G8, by the APEC, our focus is more to leverage energy efficiency in the industry with the main purpose of making our industry more competitive at a global and national level. Did I answer your question? Okay, thank you. Please, another question over here. Good morning. My question is for Glaucia from GM or someone else from GM.
You mentioned the commitment until 2050 of GM, and I would like to know if this vision of zero emissions also include the whole cycle of the vehicle, from the supply chain as a whole, in the production of the vehicle, in the use of the fuel, a full life cycle. That also includes something even greater than the GM's productive process, including society as a whole. And I would like to know if this is on the vehicle company's radar, and GM as a leader of the energy management in Brazil. I would like to understand your opinion. Actually, there are two documents that I introduced here. One is a vision, that has no time component. It's a long-term vision of reaching zero emissions. And I would even say that it's an utopy, because all the chain of vehicles and the product itself with zero emissions demand a huge effort. Until 2050, we are going to supply all the manufacturing units with 100% of renewable energy. And then we have two different trends. So when we talk about the objective 2050, then yes, we are analyzing the productive process that is in-house, only for the company. And we think the full process from the very moment when we receive the plate until the moment when we ship the vehicle. But this does not include the productive chain. When we look to the vision of future on emissions, yes, we are looking at the productive chain. Currently, we have some initiatives. So we already have, for instance, the measurement of our footprint in the chain. We work with CDP that helps us to collect this information and know the impact, and we already have some plans being developed so that the chain can become more efficient. And here, as Rodrigo and Carlos Alexandre mentioned, we have Senai programs that can help us in this initiative of adding energy efficiency to the chain, but also it is involved in the plan of futures. Yes. Good afternoon. João from Unicharme, Brazil. Perhaps Rodrigo or even Raquel. It is about people, and you talked about NDA contracts. How do you handle, for instance, in my case, that I have secrets and equipment with a high industrial and technological secrets? How do we tackle on these situations among different parties? Excellent question. Oh, the companies that we have joined with are part of a voluntary agreement, an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. So we list all the people that have access to this information, and there is a guarantee point where CNI is responsible for the secret of this process. So when we joined GM, we also had access to a series of pieces of information, and when we went to a chemical company where we were doing changes in the kinetic of the reaction of the company, we had access to very precious pieces of information. So there is a document where CNI is 20 years responsible for the secret of information exchanged in the different processes. All the people present are listed, and all the material that is generated from the software, programs, executables, they belong to the company. And this company that you asked, once we had an experience with this chemical industry, and a manager from Germany came, and this was the first question. He said the program was very well aligned, but then he asked me if I was going to also visit his competitor. And this is the question. What I had to answer was the following. These solutions developed here remain here. What I take is the know-how of the team to another company, but the executables, the information, they remain here, legally guaranteed by an NDA signed where CNI is responsible and accountable for its own equity. But if it's a company that is in Brazil and wants to join the program, the company is eligible, fortunately or not, and we have a documentation where we have it all listed. It is approved by the legal department of your company. It goes through the legal department of our company, and there is a whole guarantee for the exchange of confidential information. And we have to close our panel, and I believe that this is a good moment. And we will all be available. We can talk to you during lunch if you have any comments or any help that we can provide. Thank you very much. Now I turn to our MC.